Welcome to Conversations with Zaki, your host Zaki Baruti. We'll be having a weekly program that will be exploring many of the issues that impact people here in St. Louis, throughout the state of Missouri, as well as the country and the world. And I'm just so honored tonight for our first program, and we're going to be having a number of different guests that will be part of our program, and I'm really honored to have a very outstanding citizen of our community, a person who exemplified what he preached, and that's Reverend Larry Rice. Welcome to Conversations with Zaki.
Thank you, Zaki.
Okay, and again, I just want to inform the audience, this will be a weekly program aired at 11 p.m. on Channel 24, and I encourage you to tell your friends about the program. It's not just my program, tell them about Channel 24, because we want that Channel 24 to be the hottest thing in the St. Louis area as well as throughout the nation. So to that end, Reverend Rice, again, it's indeed a pleasure for you to be my first guest. And as I get into the various programming that will be taking place, I want to first of all say thank you for allowing me to be a host here on your great television station. And just want to ask, why me? Why am I being blessed?
Well, I think that you represent a lot of the people in the community. You've shown a tremendous interest to help do a program. There are a lot of people that are out there and they're so busy they don't want to take the time. But the fact you're willing to take the time, you have the connections like you do, I think it's going to be a fantastic program. I think it's going to have a lot of variety, and I think you'll be able to touch guests, bring people out that maybe I wouldn't be able to do, because you've just got connections in different areas of the community, and I think we want to be exposed to what you see on a daily basis.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. One of your biggest fans is my mother.
Oh.
And I want for my mother to know a little bit about you, your background, where you grew up at, the schools you went to, and just tell us about Larry Rice, Reverend Larry Rice.
I was brought up in a poverty pocket of the United States, down in the Rio Grande Valley, right across from the Mexican border. So I was brought up with low-income people. I was in the minority. I was a Caucasian and Hispanic community that time, and that's where I attended high school and went to college. And I was actually then went into a ministry, but I didn't want to become a part of any one particular denomination of the Christian religion. But I was studying initially in Concordia, Austin, Concordia, Fort Wayne to be a Lutheran minister, but felt called an interdenominational work. So I then went and finished at Fort Wayne, Indiana. We came back here and started, my first wife, Penny, and I, who has since gone to be with the Lord. She had breast cancer some 10 years ago. Well, what we did is we started out in a rented 50-foot trailer and just kind of grew from there, a total faith venture, seen a lot of answers to prayer. And we wanted to be in touch with the very poor, the very needy. So the homeless have been at the core of our very beginning.
So your very beginning was in what community? Was it here in St. Louis?
No, it was in Texas, way down in the Rio Grande Valley, at the very tip of Texas, as far as you can go down in Texas and still remain in the United States.
So your work in terms of helping the homeless, in terms of St. Louis, when did that begin?
That was when I came into ministerial training at Concordia Seminary. And we'd go out with Teen Challenge on a Friday night. I'd see people out there, and they came back and just really saw the hurt, the pain, the need. And to me, to minister means to serve. That means to help, to serve people. It's much more than just preaching. It's actually living it out and serving.
So with that said, you opened up the doors for New Life Evangelistic Center what year?
This goes all the way back to 1972. So we'll be celebrating this month our 45th anniversary.
Well, congratulations on the longevity of your work. I know it's a great work, but I'm sure it has some real serious problems and obstacles sometimes. And I want to get into some of the obstacles that you've been facing most recently in the last year or two.
Yes, this is something that we're really seeing. It actually goes back to 2012. It's really intensified and really kicked into action. And this is what we're seeing not only happen here, but all over the United States, in that upper income folks move into a neighborhood where homeless had been at for a long time, and then they want to push them out of there. And I've seen them pushed from place to place to place. So here we are at 1411 Locust, and we're saying, where do you want us to go? They're not offering any other alternative. So I know the people end up back out on the street. I know many of them will die out there. I know that many of them will go through unbelievable suffering. So that's why we're determined to continue to remain at 1411 Locust Street, where we've been now for over 40 years.
Specifically, in terms of the obstacles that's been placed to you in front of you in terms of the work that you're doing. Can you cite a few examples that are outrageous examples of the obstacles being placed in front of you?
Well, I saw it all to start in April 2012 when they destroyed the riverfront communities and encampments of the homeless. We then went, and I knew that many of them would try to start camping around our place, so we opened up an encampment at 44 in Vanderbilt, got leased ground there. And we were out going to be doing our worship services, but then Mayor Francis Slay and then city building safety director, Eddie Roth, he was head of safety director then, they came and they had me arrested. For
had you arrested?
Yeah, at 44 in Vanderbilt. I was locked up all night. And we took that to federal court, and we ultimately ended up prevailing. They had to pay our legal expenses. At that point, it was like $9,950, drop all charges against us. That was at 44 in Vanderbilt. But then part of that mediation involved, we weren't able to do our encampment there. So came back here. And then in that fall, the parking lot owners, which own the 23 properties in this area, the Waltrip family owns 23 properties.
Which family again?
The Brad Waltrip family. They own the one on both sides of us. Well, they started just letting the people sleep out there on the sidewalks. And it was part of the political scheme. Just leave them out there. Don't run them off. Let's get all the neighbors upset in the loss, which they did. They got all the neighbors upset. They all signed petitions, 150 of them, to try to declare us a public nuisance, to take away the permit we had, which was we had to get a hotel permit back then.
Okay, then we shall be returning back. We're going to take a break and look forward to continuing our conversation. So you're listening to Conversations with Zaki. You're back with Conversations with Zaki, and as my very first guest, we have the esteemed Reverend Rice of New Life Evangelistic Center, which I truly encourage you to be supportive of the work that Reverend Rice is doing through the New Life Evangelistic Center. Just prior to the break, we were looking at some of the obstacles that's been placed to try to shut you down or keep you from doing the effective work that you've been have been doing over the years.
Well, we went before the Board of Public Service, okay, and that Board of Public Service then took away. The only permit we could get back years ago was for the hotel permit. We got that. In the meantime, that's going on. The mayor moved Eddie Roth, who was head of public safety, who was previously an editor for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, to head up human services. So they started setting things in process through the media because he was an editor for the St. Louis Post. Of course, the Post couldn't say enough nice things about the city, enough bad things about us. We're going through all this bad publicity and distorted facts and the like. Well, the Board of Public Service, day before Christmas Eve, took away that little permit that we had. We then filed in federal court. We went through federal court. The federal judge just came to a point where he says, look, go back to the city, try to get whatever permits that you can, and then if you don't prevail there, then come back and see him. So we went before the Board of Building Appeals saying we want to get our permits. But they're requiring us here to get signatures from all the neighbors surrounding this place. And we're asking, why should we do that? They're not requiring it for the Bill House. The Bill House is located in a primary African-American community. They're not giving those neighbors the opportunity to sign a petition. Why are we being required to do that? Well, they're still requiring us to do that. We're appealing that decision, but we did get it dropped where we could be located across from the library. The library, in turn, is contesting that. It's really tragic that we have a downtown library that views the homeless in a negative way, although 2/3 of the proprietors, the people using their library, are homeless people.
So in terms of the direction from which the obstacles coming from, can I surmise then a lot of it coming from City Hall? Would that be a correct analysis?
It says developer, the Waltrip family working in conjunction with City Hall.
Okay, so then that brings us to another critical issue. There's going to be a very important mayoral election taking place in the city of St. Louis the first Tuesday in March. Yes. But prior to that, I have another question before we get into the politics. On the spiritual ring, you've been a Christian minister. There's hundreds and thousands of Christian pastors, both black and white, right, and of what other ethnicity. What kind of response have you been getting from your fellow?
A handful of them have come forth, have really been helping, a handful. The vast majority don't want to get involved. They don't like controversy. They kind of sit back and watch, and it's so tragic. It deeply grieves me to just see their indifference. But when they find somebody that's homeless, they drop them off here. And this is the last major walk-in shelter in mid-America. But as far as standing by our side, There were a few when we had the hearing, and the last day of the hearing before the Board of Public Service, and thank God for those that are there. The vast majority of them just want to sit it out. They ignore it. And it's tragic, because if we did not resist the cease and desist orders, if we did not resist a city hall that wants the homeless out of sight and out of mind, regardless of the human suffering involved, this being the last walk-in shelter in mid-America, where are these churches going to drop the people off at? Where are the hospitals going to take them? Where are the police going to take them? And that's why we got to fight so hard, because this is the last place that they can come to in the middle of the night.
So let me be clear. You're telling me, with the work that you're doing, and there's not been much support from from the faith community as it should be. Have you went directly to a number of the...
I've written letters. In fact, last year, I think it was like 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 letters went out to them. I plead with them. I'll send letters. Now, some do prepare some meals. Some do share some regular donations. Don't get me wrong. Some have stood with us publicly. But when you consider like 3,000 ministers in this area within a 50-mile span, and you're talking about maybe 30, maybe 40, 50 at the very most, you think, where's the rest of it? This is so true to Scripture. We have a homeless statue of the homeless Jesus in front of it. Matthew 8:20 said, "Fox have holes, birds have nests, he the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head." Particularly during the holidays at Christmas, it's very grieving. Everybody will sing songs about this homeless baby being laid in a manger, and they, for the most part, ignore all the homeless babies and the mothers and the people, unless they drive downtown real fast and then often dump the junk and then leave town again. I'm talking about getting involved in a one-to-one basis with a homeless person, help them get off the street, and get involved with the last major walk-in shelter in mid-America.
Well, again, we salute your efforts, and we encourage those faith leaders or those members who part of different faith congregations that you should encourage your leader to come out and support the work of the New Life Evangelistic Center headed by Reverend Rice. Going from faith and the lack of commitment in terms of trying to make a difference on the political scene, you know there's going to be an election, and surprisingly, Mayor Francis Slay, who, we have a negative opinion of, is not up for a re-election. And there's a number of candidates that would be running in the Democratic primary. There are some very critical issues that I know you would like to suggest from the perspective of you being out here in the community. Yeah. And I know you'll be coming out with some ideas around the concept that the people have suffered enough. Yeah. First of all, why do you say the people have suffered enough?
16 years you've had that same mayor. Over 100 people at City Hall receive over $100,000 a year. They've totally removed themselves from the hurt and the pain. They'll create a sales tax that's going to drive business out of St. Louis, and they'll go to the communities where they can buy their meals and everything else cheaper than St. Louis. If they passed this, it would be over 11.5% for a soccer stadium, but nothing to address the vast numbers of people whose utilities are shut off. People who are struggling. The struggling person, the struggling middle class, the poor, the needy, people who are struggling to survive, the homeless on the streets.
So to deal with that, I know you're calling for a political revolution.
It needs to be. We got to turn it upside down. If we want to make St. Louis great again, let's go back to 30, 40, 50 years where we weren't funding billionaires to build stadiums, but we really cared about recreational centers, we cared about senior citizen programs, people's utilities off, the homeless.
So with that, we will explore that a little further, but we're going to take a break for right now. Again, support New Life Evangelistic Center. All right, you're back with Conversations with Zaki Baruti. In our very first program, we have the great Reverend Larry Rice, who is doing remarkable work with the people who are unfortunately homeless in our society. Just before we went to the break, we were speaking in terms of the people have suffered enough, and you were saying that there needs to be a political revolution. And I know you have created an 11-point agenda as relates to the kind of political revolution that you believe that needs to occur. Elaborate on some of those points.
Well, first of all, I think that we should include directors of the Christian community, Muslim community, Jewish community, and other faith communities to make it as easy as it can for them to implement their teachings in relationship to alleviating human suffering. Why harass churches such as New Life Evangelistic Center and others that want to live out their faith? You should be supporting them. They're saving you all this taxpayers' dollars. In addition to that, we got to do something about the taxes that are on people's utility bills. If I help somebody with a utility bill of $100, why should $5, $6, $7, $8 of that go to the city? Why should people have a tax on their light gas bill when Laclede Gas moves 500 feet and they get how many millions of dollars of tax abatements? So we need to do something about that. And if we're going to give tax abatements to these big corporations, for every $1 million, require them for each year they get abated $1 million to hire 10 St. Louisans. Now, what's wrong with that? You know, hire 10 people, train 10 people, utilize them, even if they got to clean up around the building, non-skilled jobs. There's a lot of things we can do. Use this library over here. I made reference to that earlier. Put the Director of Human Services, have a sub-satellite office in that library. Homeless in there, if 2/3 of the people in there are homeless, give them job training, give them opportunities to get to a job. Then let's work public partnerships. Let's get bus tickets so these people can get out to their jobs. Let's do very practical things, going to break the cycle of homelessness and help people get the utilities on.
Now, you mentioned a word, and I want the audience to be really clear in terms of an understanding of tax abatement and how that can affect community, either positive or negative. And most times it's negative.
Well, it's destroying the St. Louis schools. I mean, the St. Louis schools have gone down because of all these abatements. Every major building, every major corporation downtown St. Louis has been abated, where they don't pay taxes according to Missouri State Law, Chapter 353, Chapter 99.
So what is a tax abatement? So that people understand.
It means they don't have to pay the property taxes like you and I have to pay. It's a greater burden.
We pay taxes, but
the big rich companies, they can get off without paying their taxes. And they do this. They say, well, if you don't abate all my property taxes, I'll just move to a different community. Well, some of them need to say, okay, we'll help you get packing, you know, because they use that as a threat. Then they get tired of that community. They want to go to the next community. So Missouri state law has been set up in such a way that it just encourages this, and it's destroyed the school, because the majority of the property taxes were going to help St. Louis schools. St. Louis schools have gone down to nothing.
So, which brings another issue, and one of the things too, in terms of with the closure of many schools, what happened to the neighborhoods?
Neighborhoods go straight down. The schools were the anchors in those neighborhoods. It's destroying the neighborhoods.
Before we get back to some of your, how you see a solution, political revolution, there is a myth I would that's permeates sometime among a lot of the population about people being homeless. That's their fault. It goes
back to the thing. Yeah, the war on poverty of the Johnson administration has become the war on the impoverished. Instead of taking our responsibility as human beings of how we can help our fellow human beings that the bottom's dropped out on, we like to make excuses for them. Oh, they're there because they have this problem, that problem, the other problem. Let's step back and see. The drug and alcohol problems, they've totally destroyed those programs on a statewide basis. Mental health programs have been destroyed on a statewide basis. They expect the police to take care of all the different problems, so just kind of keep them on the move here, there, and everywhere. And the trouble is that we need to start recognizing these are fellow human beings. And if we really believe, again, what the teachings of the Scripture say, whatever it may be, that, you know, these are people created in the image of God, then we need to treat them like that. Like God, we wouldn't be treated. Love your neighbors yourself, Jesus said.
So with that said, going back to the political revolution and some steps to eliminate human suffering, you'd like to elaborate further?
Yes, I mean, we need to start creating jobs for people, giving people a hand up. Yeah, not a handout, and that's all people want. They just want a hand up. That's what we've been trying to do all these years here at the New Life Evangelistic Center. We mentioned eliminate some of these tax abatements. Come up with creative, innovative programs, which we can do, to help people not only get employed, stay employed, give them the transportation to get out to the jobs, and then give them some help.
We want to take a break again and be right back with you. Okay. You're back with Conversations with Zaki. Turning to another subject, I know we were citing many of the obstacles that you were faced with in terms of by the city in terms of trying to close you down. You have also created points of demands for justice. Kind of elaborate.
Yeah, these demands for justice are saying, look, we want to get our permits, work with us, stop hindering us from getting the necessary permits, get us a 30-minute parking in front of our building again, stop harassing our donors when they pull up. Got police officers there that make them move on. They should go to the New Life Facebook and see the see what they should, the Elliot Davis piece that's there, the 8-minute Elliot Davis piece that's on there showing how the police harass people come in. Take down the signs that the mayor's put up trying to take our donations donations. You see these 4 signs that are up if you want to donate items, and then call the number where he can reflect it to his favorite charity. I mean,
wait a minute, are you saying to us, the world is listening to you?
Yes.
That the mayor has put signs in front of your facility, redirecting them from your facility to another.
4 signs, 2 on this side of the street right in front of our building, 2 across the street that said if you got food, clothing, and items to donate, call, and then he gives his number out. People supposed to call that number, then he'll say, well, bring them on to my place, and then he'll give them to people that support his causes.
Wow. As we wind down the program, for those who are out there listening, and viewing the program, what actually can they do to be of support?
I would encourage them to go to the New Life website, newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. Tremendous opportunities all over, not only downtown St. Louis, Springfield, other communities, but that newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. Please volunteer. And then, of course, we need people to donate. We took on the Women's Day Center this year when the bridge closed. We've taken on a lot of projects we did not have budgeted for. Tremendous financial needs right now. And if they'd send a check to P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri, 63166, it'd be a great blessing. You
mentioned the women's program. Explain a little bit of that.
Women and children.
I've seen some of your work.
Women and children have nowhere to go. We have a day center where they can just go in, and it's just women and children come in. They're there all day long. Those that have been out on the street all night, they can take a nap. We have meals for them, showers for them, place to store their belongings. Then after that, they can come in and check in if they'd like, and go up to shelter on the 3rd floor. Or some have late check-in at 8 o'clock, however they want to do it.
Final summation. What would be a final word to the politicians, to the faith leaders, to just everyday people about our mission in life?
God has called us, he said, and Jesus said, often you done to the least these, even so he done unto me. Care about your fellow human beings. Walk a mile in their particular shoes. Please get involved. And here at New Life Evangelistic Center, we want to bring people together, a bridge, and I encourage you to get involved.
So on that note, you have heard it from Reverend Larry Rice, and we want to thank you and tune in for next weekend's program.